Hi, everybody. David McLeod here, your life mastery coach. Welcome to another episode of Soul Empowerment. This one is called Bridging Polarities. I want to welcome all the folks who are here on the live presentation and invite you, if you have comments or questions, please just submit them in the chat area and we'll do our best to respond to them as we go. We are going to have a lot of fun today. So I'm going clockwise on the way I see pick people on my screen. So Christy, why don't you start and introduce yourself this morning?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. And I'm here from Wells, Maine. I am an intuitive energy healer and spiritual expansion coach. And I love this topic. It's got so many little juicy tidbits to it. I think that's all I want to say right now about myself.
Well, thank you and welcome, Christy. Sarah, you're next on my clockwise direction here. Please introduce yourself.
Hiya, folks. I'm Sarah Jane. Other people, please think of me as Sarah. Sarah Jane's a mouthful. I'm a complementary health therapist here in the UK because I'm UK based. In case the accent didn't give it away. And my concentration is mainly on energy work, Reiki and sound energy. But I'm also the founder of Gift of Healing TV. So I'm very delighted to have had David a number of times as a guest on the program. And hopefully at some stage we'll also get Christy and Nancy on as well. But for now, I will leave it to
Well, thank you, Sarah, and welcome. And Nancy, good to see you again. Welcome. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself and what you're all about?
All right. Well, I'm Nancy Stevens. I work in the area of self-care and well-being for body, mind, and spirit. I also have a business that kind of contributes to well-being and self-care. I have an Uplift Clean Beauty skincare brand that I co-own, and when I'm not working the business, I enjoy doing the show here, blogging for the wellness universe, and just being of service to those who are looking to move themselves further ahead in their life.
That's great. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
So there you have it, folks. This is the Soul Empowerment team as we are currently configured. And today, as I said, we're going to be talking about this idea of bridging polarities. And
David, please introduce yourself, hon.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
David, please introduce yourself.
Oh, I thought I did at the beginning. Well, my name is David McLeod. I am a life mastery coach, author, speaker, and I one of the primary people, I guess, on the Wellness Universe now. I've been pretty active there. And I do a lot of these kinds of programs because I just love sharing what knowledge I have. And I really like being able to work with people like these beautiful women here who have so much knowledge and wisdom. And I like finding ways of bringing this knowledge and wisdom to you so that you can benefit from it and maybe make some changes and shifts in your life. That's really what I'm all about. And of course, my concept is life mastery, which just to explain, I don't think any of us ever becomes a true life master, at least not in one lifetime. But life mastery itself is a kind of a process of growth and expansion and moving ever closer to the fullness of who we really are. So that's how I see it, and that's why I call myself your life mastery coach. Okay. And thank you for that, Christy. So here we are on episode number 27, talking about bridging polarities. Now, why on earth do you suppose we picked that topic title? Well, I can say that when we had our topic meeting, there was all kinds of stuff going on. And eventually this notion of polarities, the idea of hot, cold, left, right, up, down, black, white, in, out, good, bad, right, wrong, all those kinds of polarities that we are faced with every single day in our physical life, we decided maybe it's time to take a look at these. And since so many polarities in our world right now seem to be dividing us, maybe there's a way for us to use the information in the polarities to help bring us back together. hence the idea of bridging the polarities. So that's kind of where we came from, and I'm just going to open the floor, and I'm going to say, who would like to start this conversation rolling?
Come on, Christy.
So here we have one
Okay,
silence or speaking.
I have never shied away from being the first in line. So I think that this topic is one that I hope will feel timely for those who are joining us today, because we can tend to take a very polarized view of what's happening in our world. And yet, if we don't see things that are happening as either all for the good or all for the bad, and we allow ourselves to find that space in the middle, that's where we find our unique strengths and our unique ways that we can shift things and contribute to solutions. I think I would just leave that as this one thought for now.
Well, I like what you're saying about the place in the middle. I think we have a natural tendency to think in terms of, the opposites, the left and the right and so forth. And really, if you think about anything, like, let me give you a simple example, like hot and cold. Really, they are just simply focal points along a continual scale. We have a temperature scale that goes from, we have this theoretical minimum of absolute zero, but there's no upper limit. And I mean, the upper limit would be like really, 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 really hot. And yet for us, hot is somewhere very low on the scale of possibilities. And cold is just slightly less on the scale, So if we can understand that the polarity is really just two different focal points along a continuum, then we can start to think more along the lines of what Christy was suggesting, of finding that place in the middle that might be ripe with all kinds of beautiful answers and solutions and wisdom that we can look at.
That definitely, that's kind of where I am right now. I'm in the middle of looking at that side of, oh, maybe I'm going to be this way, but then knowing that there's more to it. So this topic has been it's very timely for me in examining my own thought and emotional feelings process in terms of what it means to pay attention and shift or expand my perspective from what I might have thought was true and real. Is it really? So that's kind of what actually occurred to me this week. That's kind of where my head is at right now, is what I'm thinking real? What are other areas that come into play with the state of the world right now, and also personally in my life with where I stand. So I'm interested as well in unfolding this topic for my own self, but helping each of you guys listening to dig a little bit deeper and expand yourselves.
Well, thank you for that. Sarah, why don't you share a little bit on your perspective on this topic?
I was thinking about this, and I sort of thought about the yin and the yang. And we all have the masculine and the feminine within us. Mm-hmm. We all have the good and the bad within us. We have that anger and calm. We have the different polarities in so many ways right here inside of us for this human experience. And for me, it's it is for us to try and find that bridge, that middle ground that honors all of it, that honors for us women the masculine within us, for men the feminine within them. You know, honoring that sense of anger and outrage about things, and that aspect of, yes, I'm aware there's stuff going on, but I can send love to it rather than actually getting involved in the negative energies around it. So we can, and first I think it is accepting that within each of us we have it all. And then it's how we sit in the middle ground so that we're honouring the whole of who we are.
Right. I agree with that. Thank you. And by the way, I want to just comment on your yin and the yang. As you said that, I had the actual symbol pop up in my mind. And if, in case people don't know, the yin and the yang, you've got the black kind of curvy thing and then the white curvy thing, and they kind of fit together really snugly in this beautiful circular structure. Well, what's interesting about the yin and yang, or any circular object like that has two colors, if you take it and spin it, there's no longer two colors. If you spin it fast enough, your eyes cannot focus on the white or the black. So we end up seeing gray, which is the middle ground color, if you like. The same thing is true with all kinds of other optical illusions where, they try to show something, and then when they rotate it, it has a completely different effect. So this is something that, and the reason I'm bringing that up is the notion of rotating really is another way of talking about changing your perspective. And so, anytime you observe within yourself one of these polarities, whether, maybe it's anger versus calm, or happy versus sad, or some other combination of polarities that you might experience, you can just simply look at your perspective and say, okay, where's the middle ground in this? I mean, it's not to make one good or bad or the other one the opposite. It's not to do that at all. It's just simply to be observing and being aware of what's going on in your own body and in your mind, and then making a decision based on your observation about how you want to respond to that. And I think that's really what we're talking about here, is first noticing the polarities and then doing your own practice to find whatever it is that your mind or your body or anything is trying to tell you, and then finding that beautiful middle ground, that place of love right in the middle of everything.
I had a couple things come up on the last 2 points. For one, with the Yin and Yang symbol, which is so powerful, and I think it is that beauty of balance. And I think the thing that we tend to forget, or we fail to notice, is that those two pieces are held together by, it may be invisible or sometimes it's shown, but there is a bounding circle that's holding those two pieces in balance. And that to me is almost a metaphor for the spiritual aspect of life that's invisible, and yet it's holding things in harmony and balance. But we have to recognize that there's a lens that we're seeing things through, and we've been groomed or conditioned to see things a lot of times through the media through a lens of fear. And so I want you to just realize or become aware when you do feel fearful in the way things are being presented to you, to first of all take a step back and kind of visualize that yin and yang, and then also visualize the circle that's holding things in balance, the circle that's enfolding you, the circle that's guiding everything. The other thing I wanted to share was to David's point of spinning that and creating that blur of gray. And I've almost been shown like a different kind of aspect of that, whereas like we have black on this side and white on this side, and we get so focused on those. But what if there's a rainbow in the middle of those? What if that's where like the magic happens? That's the spectrum, right? That's the spectrum of possibilities. It's not necessarily here and it's not necessarily there. So we've got to start to train ourselves to look away from these two alternatives, or what we see as options, or, the only. It's not the only.
I think that's really thoughtfully put, Christy. And what, I guess in my own life, my situation, so we're working with our own loving consciousness and awareness to move from maybe one polarity or another, and finding a place to be in the middle, that middle ground. And that is definitely a journey, because I guess if we're so ingrained with what we think is the truth by being attached to that polarity, or seeing the signs as saying, well, this is so, it does take it. I believe it is a process of moving through the spectrum and knowing that there are always more positions or perspectives than meets the eye. And that is, I think it's something that is never ending. It's, as long as we're alive, we're going to be using this tool of finding that middle ground, rather than saying it's either, hot or cold, or, rainy or cloudy, so to speak, or whatnot. So it's a very interesting energy. I guess it's a very fluid energy. Maybe I'll have you guys chime in on that. It's a fluid energy that as much as we grow from each experience, we bring that into our present experience.
Right.
So I think
Before we
what
go
you're
on,
saying.
sorry, Christy, just a second here. I just wanted to invite the people who are on the call here live. If you have comments or questions and you'd like to share your perspective on this topic, please do so by writing into the chat, and we'll respond to you as we can. Sorry, Christy, go ahead.
That's okay. I just was gonna bravo, Nancy, and just say that I think, to be explicit, what you're saying really shows why we need to be present, why we have to be consciously present, because if we're just on autopilot and going with, this surge of whatever, we're not exercising our choices.
That's a good point. Sarah, what do you have to say about all this?
Finding the way to turn the mic back on might help. Going back to something that you said, David, feelings. What we feel about something. We are here to experience. We are here to feel. Allow the feelings, but I suppose it's a matter of not living in the feelings. Be aware of them and find a way to understand why you feel the way you do. Why do you feel happy? Why do you feel angry? Why do you feel sad? Why do you feel that way? Can you put your finger on the why? Because if you can, then that is a really good start. And maybe it's to do with upbringing and the way we've been taught. And then it's, well, But do I really have to feel that way? And I suppose a classic example for me was that feeling, that fear of what other people thought about me. And with that realization that they're not thinking about you, they've got far too much going on in their own lives, came a freedom of that feeling. But that feeling came from experiences of feeling unwanted, unloved, not good enough. And then you were sort of talking about the black and white. And I've sort of this quote that I've come up with, which is, it's time to move from the black and white world that we appear to live in, to live life in full colour and see things from so many different perspectives. I love the Yin and Yang symbol, I really do. But it is time for us to move out, throw the box away, realise that there is more to life than we feel we've been taught.
That's beautiful, Sarah, and I agree with you. I think that these polarities, general polarities, have a way of limiting our perspective, and they can, get us tied up. Our ego minds like to latch on to one polarity or the other, and then not only that, we like to say, well, my polarity is better than your polarity, so therefore I'm right and you're wrong, and this is the kind of dynamic and the drama that we create with polarities. So you're absolutely right. It's time to, I think, find that middle ground, look for the full color version of life rather than just the black or white. And I really like what Kenneth said here. This is a beautiful segue, I think. He says, what if we start with the perfection of spirit, which is not perceived with the mind that creates duality? We stop thinking and start knowing the spiritual truth by rising above corporeal sense and developing spiritual sense. Well, that's very, very deep and obviously a very enlightened kind of statement to pose here. And not everybody necessarily might fully understand it, but it's a beautiful statement. It resonates with my heart and my soul. And I agree 100% with what you're saying, Kenneth. So thank you for that. What do you guys think? What do you ladies think about this idea of starting with the perfection of spirit, which is not perceived with the mind that creates duality? How do we get there? What do you think is the answer to that question?
I think for me, the easiest way to, well, there's multiple steps, but I was going to say the easiest way to verbalize it for me is faith. That's the word, faith, that light prevails, that things are happening for our highest good, that we change the world as and through ourselves. So this is kind of one point I really wanted to express in the show, is that, whatever you're feeling that's coming from these external triggers or situations, you can't feel that unless it's already in your library of experiences. So all of these seemingly bad things that happen are really an opportunity for us to find our wounded feelings and bring them to the light and to transform them from fear to a more pleasant experience, from black to technicolor. I hope that's not too off point, but this is the aspect of emotional transformation that was kind of included in the write-up. If we just know that we have this fear inside of us and we think we shouldn't feel that fear, we're always going to have that fear inside of us. We haven't really evolved that or transformed that. So when things do come at you, as Sarah said, try to find the origin story of that fear within you. That fear was probably created in some sort of illusionary situation where you either thought you weren't safe or you weren't loved or you weren't good enough, and none of that was truth with a capital T. So you find that story, you bring it back to love, and then you've healed part of the collective fear through and as yourself.
You know what's interesting to me, as you were talking, and I was kind of thinking a little bit about what Kenneth had said, and kind of relating it to your comment. Here we are having we're spiritual beings having a human experience. There's a polarity right there that I don't think we've ever talked about, but that's what it is. It's this notion that there's a difference between the physical and the spiritual, and really they are just different expressions of the same energy. And I think that's an important thing for us to recognize. And I also want to acknowledge what Renee said here. She said, sometimes, I'm thinking that polarities exist for a reason. She's wondering if all of them do or they don't. And is navigating with one or another something that we should understand too, or is it always that alignment can be achieved? I think that's a great question. And, I think polarities do exist for a reason. I think, and personally, my understanding is the reason is to help us to become aware of the way we polarize things, and to allow us to have that experience so that we can elevate ourselves above it and do what we're doing here today, which is trying to bridge those polarities. I think if we didn't know about the polarities, then what would we be doing? We'd be it's kind of like, to coin a phrase, it's almost like mental masturbation. And that's not really what I want to do here. I want this to be a meaningful conversation about a topic that can serve us. So thank you, Renee, for bringing that up. And yeah, I agree that as human beings in our physical form, these polarities seem very real and they seem very legitimate, and our ego minds love attaching to them. So it's just something to be aware of. And I'm gonna poke Nancy here and try and get some more information from her. Come on, Nancy.
All right, it's taking everything in. Yeah, I'm resonating with what everyone has shared. I'm, like I said, I had something come up in my life this week that really caused, the universe was asking me to stop and to pause and to begin to absorb what was shared and be present with that, moving away from maybe what I had thought was, quote, the right path, which again was, just a thought, into broadening my perspective on where was I meant to put my energy and learn from. So the polarities, like I said, it couldn't have come at a better time, with my energy, with me getting wrapped up with my energy, feeling that I needed to place it in this space and in this area because, I had so much energy around that. Well, it must be true and it must matter. It must be important. So I got caught up in focusing so much on that it brought other aspects out of balance. So when this came to my awareness, I was given permission, I suppose, if I were looking for that, to pull away from that and just take a breath. How do I need to balance this or reframe it? And I'm still working on that, but I'm very thankful that this information came to me, and with our tools that we always learn on our show, I know that there's so many ways to pause and find that middle ground with introspection and compassion to bring a more, whatever the word is, more balanced or full spectrum, not just thinking that this is it, this must be the truth. But that's what I'm learning, is there's more than one truth and different avenues of what's meant to be in your life, and being lifted out of that single perspective. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's always more than what is what appears to be in that moment and giving yourself a lens to move into a different space so you can move more fluidly and freely.
I like what you said about you felt a very, very strong energy, and you were thinking that, well, if I have this much energy, it must be really important. That's an interesting perspective right there, and I think it's definitely true in my life. You know, the more strongly I feel about something, the more energy I have about it, the greater my ego mind likes to just latch onto it and make it, you know, like super important. Now, I don't know if that's what you're talking about exactly, but I can relate to it in that way. So I think it's this is part of the challenge that we have as human beings. You know, we have this ego mind, which has a powerful purpose to help us navigate through the physical world and basically to keep us safe from, you know, external dangers and so forth. But in the process, it also it really likes belief systems. So if I have a belief about something, my ego mind goes out of its way to find evidence to support that belief and to discard anything that might disagree with that belief. That's kind of how the ego mind works. And what that does is it restricts my ability then to see things more clearly. So when I have that experience of, oh, this must be really important, sometimes I need to remind myself, yes, it's really important for me to look at the whole spectrum. So something that might be useful for you, Nancy, and for anybody else who's listening to this. But Christy, I see you are chomping.
Well, it's interesting when you said the mind is useful or the mind has a purpose. Spirit said, yes, it creates the illusion of duality.
Exactly. Yeah.
It creates the polarity. It creates the separation. So that's why becoming more aware, and like I tell my clients, we find that place where we're almost living above the ego mind, above the mind, and being the observer of the mind so we can change what the mind is thinking.
Right. And I also like what Thomas offered here. This is a great observation. He says, aren't polarities necessary for energy to flow? And on the physical level, that certainly is true. And it may even be true universally. I don't know. I like his example of a battery with only one pole connected. You know, it's obviously, you know, you can't do anything with that battery. You have to connect the other side so that the energy can flow and create a circuit. So maybe in that sense, I do think polarities are important. Yeah. Sorry, what do you want to say? I see you're ready to speak.
Just going through a couple of things that we talked about. The spiritual perfection. Our souls come from pure love. They know nothing but love, is my understanding. And we have these physical experiences so that our soul can learn and experience. So it is essential for us to have the polarities, to have both sides. How can we experience? How can we know hot if we don't know cold? You know, light and dark. We can't know either without the other. And that goes for so many different things. You know, they say white is every colour, black is the absence of colour. So we need the white, the black, and everything in between. Those experiences. So yes, I really do believe that for the experience we're having, for our soul purpose, for our soul to experience, whatever terminology you wish to use, whatever makes you comfortable. We're not actually here to be our perfect spirit being. Because, well, it just wouldn't work within this human experience. We wouldn't be experiencing anything because we would be too far above it all. You know, and so, yes, for a long long time I felt I was wearing lead boots. And it was just like,
Lead,
okay,
lead boots, did you say?
lead boots. I was really being kept here on Earth. And I didn't know why, because I don't think that, you know, but there was obviously something. And because I was going through an awful lot of the different things that I was learning and feeling, and experiences I had within meditations, etc., were amazing. But they were quite high energy. But I'd like to get back to the, if for want of a better way of putting it, the lower energy, which is what we're here to experience, is to give our soul that knowing of the differences. But I was getting ready very early one morning because I was on a television program in the UK called The Weakest Link. Now I had to fly from where I live right down on the south coast up to Scotland to record this program. And I was getting ready in the morning, and I felt this sensation that I felt so many times, sort of, if you like, in the pit of your stomach. And I had always associated that with fear. But suddenly there was that awareness. Is it fear, or is it anticipation? Is there an anticipation? Because as a very tiny child, I was hospitalized for 3 months. My parents could only come and see me once a week, hospital rules and circumstances, and that was only for an hour. Every time they came, there was that anticipation I was going to be taken home, and I got let down every time for 3 months until eventually I did get to go home. But by then, an awful lot of actually emotional damage had been done. So that sensation actually became associated with fear that I was going to be yet again rejected. But it was that getting ready that morning, and it was such a beautiful gift to be given. This feeling I'm feeling isn't what I thought it was for so many years. It is something different. So that's where it goes back to what I said about, if you have a feeling, then what is behind that feeling? And could the feeling you're having be something totally different to what you think? So how could I have that experience, have gone through everything I've gone through, if I was in my perfect spirit state of love?
That's beautiful, Sarah. I really appreciate your sharing that. And I think there's a huge piece of wisdom here that I just want everybody to kind of get. And so I'm going to paraphrase a little bit what I heard you say. And it's kind of tying back to the ego. The ego mind bases a lot of its current decisions on past information. In fact, it bases all of its decisions on past information. And the more past information you have, the more pattern matching the ego mind is able to do. So as Sarah was describing this, she's describing this feeling of some kind of a lump, I think you said, in the pit of your stomach. And the ego mind remembered that from way back in early childhood and said, oh, this is a bad thing. A bad thing's going to happen. Look out, bad thing's going to happen. That's kind of the message that was created in Sarah's mind as a result of that experience. So now a whole new experience shows up and a similar feeling shows up. And what's the ego mind do? It looks through its database and says, oh, yeah, that's back here. That's this thing. Look out, a bad thing's going to happen. And this is why I believe Sarah is so right on. What you're feeling today may be similar to something that you experienced before, but it may be completely unrelated. So it really, really, really is a good idea to go inside and say, okay, what is this feeling all about? What's really going on for me? Not what went on with me, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, whenever it was. What's going on with me right now? And just try to get to the truth of it and say, oh, Yeah, I am feeling a little bit of fear, but there's some real excitement mixed in there. And together, those things to me are anticipation. Great. So you see how you can reframe something just by doing a little bit of introspection. So I just want to also acknowledge Kenneth made another great comment here. He says, perhaps we start by understanding that spirit is whole and complete under the divine law of one power. Absolute good and duality is a belief in two powers and under the law of karma. So that's kind of the idea of spirit is oneness, and the physical world and the divine or the karma thing is more the duality. And they exist, they coexist together, and all of it is a way for us to have this combined physical and spiritual experience.
But I would like to make a response on Thomas's point about aren't polarities necessary? And absolutely. And I think that if we look at anything bad that we feel, there's.
I think that's you, Nancy. I'm gonna just mute you here. Okay, good.
To kind of go back to Sarah's example, and what I was trying to say earlier about transforming, being emotional transformers, she went back and found the story of that feeling she was feeling. And she transformed it from that old story to a new awareness. There's a great quote I love from a 14th century philosopher named Rumi, that the wound is the place that the light enters us. So we can see on some level these things as happening for our growth, for our transformation, for our expansion. And similarly, when we look at our world, things that are playing out from eons of running underground. So the wound, again, is the place that the light enters. These circumstances are giving humanity an opportunity to love one another, to feel connected to one another, to support one another, to feel that oneness, to understand that no one can be free until everyone is free.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Full goosebumps from that. So yes, we can see this polarity as a gift in a way. So again, we shouldn't try not to experience it. We can look at what is the opportunity it's bringing.
Mm-hmm. And there are great gifts in every experience, even the ones that we right now, when they're happening, when the experience is happening and we say, oh my God, this is an awful experience. I'm really hating this part of my life and blah, 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 the yakety yak stuff going on. Once that experience is over and we come out on the other side and we reflect on it, it might take minutes afterwards. It might take years. It might take eons. It might take lifetimes. But eventually you can look back on that experience and say, wow, that experience, had it not been for that, then this other beautiful gift would never have shown up over here. So you may not always be able to say, oh, I can't wait for the gift that comes out of this experience. But imagine if you could. Imagine what your life would be like if you could be embroiled in something currently seeming terrible and be able to say to yourself, oh, I can't wait for the gift out of this thing. You might have a shift in the way you approach and respond to that event.
That's really interesting because, yeah, I guess to find that middle ground in the fulcrum of life, if we're able to experience whatever happens. It can be completely unexpected, out of nowhere, quote, worst case scenario, or wow, a walk in the park. If, as I'm learning, if we learn to posture ourselves with the energy that whatever it is we're experiencing is in that present moment, it's not going to, that same experience is only in that moment. And what can we, once we've gone through that, what can we receive? What learning was meant to be given to us as a result of being in that experience, versus clinging to, one energy and thinking that's it, but backing away into posturing yourself. Maybe once that situation or event or season is ended, what is it I was meant to learn? I mean, that seems to always be a theme in my life. I'm sorry, I've got a noise, so I'll have to mute. But whenever something seems just this onslaught of whatever, once that situation has released itself and I've got a moment to breathe, then this amazing energy of here's what you were meant to become or learn. And that's always the case, even if in the moment it doesn't seem that way at all. But that's really good. A gift that we can each give ourselves in our life is knowing that there's always something to be harnessed and cultivated and gathered from that which seems, worst case or best case.
Exactly. When I was receiving some support after the broken jaw and the leaving my marriage and everybody telling me I was depressed, when actually for the first time in my life I was actually feeling so much lighter than I'd ever felt. But when I received that help, this individual said to me, "You never know when you are being lucky." And some of the worst things you can think of, just take a holiday. You've been saving for this holiday forever and a day and you miss the plane. The plane crashes. It doesn't take you long to feel so grateful that you weren't on it. Obviously, heart goes out to everybody else. Train crashes that you were meant to be on. How many people weren't in the Twin Towers that should have been in the Twin Towers? You can look at life. So that broken jaw of mine, that 6 months of pain and sleepless nights, that exhausted me so much that I turned around and said, I can't keep living this life, which actually was a lie because I was a people pleaser. I wasn't doing anything for me and everything for everybody else. It was a massive gift. It exhausted me, so I just couldn't keep doing it. It was not fun to go through, but I wouldn't change a thing of it. It's that you never know when you're being lucky. And absolutely, as you said, Nancy, it's not easy to be in that place and to realise that actually this is something of benefit. But it really is. No, just being able to sit in that place of, okay, I'm not having fun. But if I hold that energy and there is something great to come out of this, I can get through it. I'm not going to try and get round it, over it, under it. I am going to go through it. And we should try and go through things rather than try and avoid them. Because our growth from that going through can be phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that I like to teach people is, well, if you think about where you are today, you experienced all kinds of obstacles throughout your life, all kinds of things that got in your way, that, that said, hey, no, you got to go a different way or something. And what's interesting is no matter what showed up in your life up to this point, no matter what event happened, somehow you found your way over, under, around, or through it to get where you are now. So give yourself a nice big pat on the back because you have been 100% successful. Nobody even thinks about that, you know? Oh, my life, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you think about where you are today and think about all the things that you've had to deal with throughout your lifetime to get here, that's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, you may not have all the things that you want in your life yet. That doesn't mean you won't. Maybe you don't have it all yet, and that's okay. You know, maybe you're not meant to have it all just yet. Maybe that's part of your learning experience. Maybe that's what the blessing is for you, to learn patience. Because once you do get all that you really want in life, suddenly you're going to say, now I get why it went the way it went, and now I'm here. So this is something for all of us to remember. No matter how dark life might look in any given moment, in the next moment, it's going to be brilliantly light. You know, it's going to be absolutely spectacularly illuminated. And by the same token, just because your life is full of brilliant, beautiful light right now, doesn't mean you're not going to experience some more darkness as you go through the next few steps and phases of your life. So look forward to them. Enjoy the darkness. Find out what you can learn about yourself in the darkness. There's great gifts there too. So, in fact, for some of us, maybe your greatest gifts are in the darkness.
I think this speaks to the point we wanted to share about just being aware or beware of the judge. Really, nobody made you the judge of what's going on in your life or anybody else's. So the thing that brought me, like, I guess, wisdom on this is there's a section of Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to Be Me.
That's a great title, by the way.
Yeah, she literally was dying because she was so self-judgmental. It's a great book. Everybody should really read it to get in touch with how much we can change ourselves just by loving ourselves.
Can you put
but there's a
title
section.
and her name into the chat when you get a chance?
Sure. We're near the end of the time, so I'm just going to do it really quickly right now. Anita Moorjani, Dying to Be Me. So she kind of says life is like this big quilt, and we're all the threads that are kind of woven together, and we're making this quilt. But we can only see the underneath part that has all the knots and the tangles and the slubs in the thread. But that higher architect that's designing life sees everything, sees that beautiful picture. So for me, like, a lot of balance has come in realizing I'm not the architect. I don't know everything that's going on. Trusting. That's that faith piece I was trying to mention.
It's beautiful. I like that. Yeah. I'm sure that everybody has heard the notion of the quilt or the tapestry or other metaphors for, you know, the beautiful, amazing thing called life, and how all of us, every single one of us, is, you know, we're a thread in that tapestry. Well, can you imagine what would happen to that tapestry or to that quilt if that one thread was missing? You know, maybe nothing would happen for a long time, but sooner or later, there's a weakness within the tapestry or within the quilt, and it starts to come apart. So every single one of us is important. Every energy form throughout the universe is important, and I say equally important. Now, that doesn't mean any one of us is any more important than anybody else, and so don't let your ego mind get all excited about that. Just note that you are as important as any other living being anywhere in the universe. because you are serving the purpose of being that thread in the tapestry that helps to keep it together and helps to create that beautiful image that, you know, that we're all working to create. And we don't even know what the whole thing looks like yet. You know, that's the beauty of it. Nancy, I want to hear some more from you.
Well, good. I was just unmuted myself. I seem to have a noise lately. I think that was beautifully placed, that knowing that we are not the be all and the end all, although at times to us, it may seem like we've got the weight of the world on our shoulders, or this event is only happened to us, or, you know, if it's either good or not good, that we are a part of the piece of the whole. And there's goodness and energy to be harnessed from so many sources. That was one of my learning lessons this week. And another one is to almost take this topic of polarities, and really, you know, it may play out for a season in your life or whatnot, but these polarities also exist in the moment. And maybe what we're really putting a lot of energy and attention on in this moment about, you know, what's going to happen in the next hour, and we just have all of this awareness about whatever, making it more so or less so. And then, and just like that, an expansion for learning opens up, and maybe what we had a lot of thought energy on just in that instant of an hour has completely changed. So it really is moment by moment. And I guess not to put so much weight on what we're feeling in that moment, but again, know that we're one in humanity, and that moment even is there to catch our attention if we're able to, and learn from that moment, knowing that this is not it. This is not all it. Again, whether it's a really good flow of energy or an energy of challenge. So that this, I just gathered that just now on this show. I was like, oh, okay. How I was feeling before I got on today, where I am now is completely changed. And I was giving the gift by you guys of completely being in flow with that energy to make that change.
Amazing how that happens, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
and really, I think, Christy, at the beginning, you talked about how sometimes we might be looking through a lens of fear as we you know, go through our lives. What I would really like people to go away with is, what happens if you actually put on these special imaginary glasses that only allow you to see from a place of love? What if you could just view everything from that energy of pure love, unconditional love, unconditional acceptance? You know, your life might not suddenly be perfect, but you could simply accept it as it is. And then once you accept it, you can now make a choice for yourself about what it is, now that I've accepted it, what it is that I want to choose to maybe shift or alter or transform in some way. That's the beauty of I think, finding that lens of love and being able to look through it as much as possible, you know. And if you happen to drop your glasses and forget for a moment and fall back into the old patterns, well, be gentle with yourself, first of all, but pick up those glasses and try and put them back on, and maybe clean them off a little, you know, make sure they can see clearly. Let your life be an exercise of constantly living in this place of viewing everything from a place of love. If it's a practice, for sure. Yeah. So, Christy, did you want to close out with a final comment before I end the program?
I don't necessarily have to do that, but thank you. I did have just a thought that, you know, sometimes when we're fearful, and Nancy, this was coming through when you were speaking, is sometimes like the mind doesn't understand how the universe is going to align to bring us what we need or to work out the situation. So the mind only sees things as happening in this linear way, whereas if we open to possibilities, things could come from over here that we never considered that.
Right. Beautiful. Sarah, would you like to finalize your statement here today?
All I would say is be kind to yourself. Let yourself love yourself, regardless of what's going on, regardless of how you're feeling. Love for yourself, staying out of judgment of yourself. You know, we shouldn't be judging anybody else, but just guess what? We shouldn't be judging ourselves either.
Exactly,
You know, we
right.
are amazing, beautiful beings.
Yeah.
Love yourself, regardless of what you're going through at the moment. That energy of love, when you can feel it truly for you, then you can bring it to so many more. The permission you give yourself is the permission you give to others for them.
Mhm.
Great, thank you. Nancy?
Well, I take in what all of you have said today, and I guess that, to me, that's one of the context of bridging the gap with our polarities is being mindful or conscientious of bringing in the energy of love and using that lens to expand what we may be overly attached to in that minute or season, to bring in the other perspectives that the lens of love offers with clarity and more openness. At least that's my journey right now this week. So that's what I've been called to do, is to find, bridge my polarities with the lens of love versus that beautiful, unneeded judgment.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I want to just repeat here what Renee said in the chat. She says, love is not just a practice, but a purpose. We are all created by love, to love, and to be loved. Love is the only lens, really. I love it. That's so great. Well, thank you for that, Renee. And first, ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for being here. And thank all of you folks on the live stream who joined us today. I'm just excited about this. So the recording of this show and every other show that we do is going to be on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. So you can find them over there. Meanwhile, I just want to wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. And may you find a way to bridge the polarities in your life.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.